Initial thoughts, non spoiler on the release of episode 1. Overall, I thought the episode onto itself was fairly strong, but I do agree that a lot of critics have taken Westworld to task for getting more and more muddled in its plotting and storytelling. So, what is occurring? And I don't want to say too much because it was done very well. It's very effective in how this male character essentially deals with some antagonists, and I think it was mostly tasteful. It's fairly graphic. Westworld has a lot of sex and violence, and I thought this was sort of mostly tonally very powerful. It does raise a few questions in terms of canon, thinking, okay, they used this kind of technology to defeat these opponents, so does that make sense internally? Will it come up later? A lot of interesting things. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this male character, and I like a lot of what happened with him, but unfortunately, I think that was the highlight, and then it starts to kind of quickly devolve. And the other storylines, the other characters, never, I think, managed to get back to that high that we get right at the beginning. And also, that section is not that long. It's probably one of the briefest sections among the main characters. So, most of the episode is then devoted to the three other characters. Again, I'm going to try to be vague to maintain the element of surprise. Although, by this time, probably most people have seen it. I want to be non spoilerish. I'm a little confused because it seems it's not Dolores, but I would say a version of Dolores. She may not be in the real world. A lot of people are already hypothesizing she's in a kind of park or maybe a simulation because just the things that happened with her felt very unreal. She goes out on a date and her roommate just talks very, very funny to her. It may be she's kind of like a Matrix style agent trying to control her. And the date she goes on with the person, he acts really weird and talks really strange. And if we know Dolores, she wouldn't stand for it. She'd be very, very aggressive. Also, the way that the boss talks down to her, it felt very weird, and she'd probably be much more responsive. Instead, she just takes it. So I think they're sort of doing a contrasting of attitudes to this version of Dolores to our Dolores. Could be wrong because again, the way Westworld works, the person we're looking at is not who you think they are. So this might not be really Dolores, but it's a version of Dolores. But I found it intriguing enough, and I will say there's a very strong twist at the end with her story at the conclusion of the episode. So you want to stay for that. So just be patient and work through the other slogging parts. And what I have to say about the other two main characters, who appear to be situated in the real world, well, I liked with what happened with the female character. That was very interesting in her showing off some agency and basically taking out a bunch of hunters who are after her. And that provides clues to the initial male character. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. It seems like they're tied together. A lot of people have been complaining the plots are a little bit all over the place. They don't even seem to really line up at all. But okay, they do seem to be trying to tie things together finally. So we're going to have actual progression in the plot and story. So that was interesting. You still have little questions about her powers and abilities. It's like, okay, how strong is she again? And will she maintain this power level? Will it be consistent throughout the whole season? We have to wait and see. But they've sort of put her on a kind of hero's journey. I usually don't like those things, but hopefully with her they'll add some interesting twists. And even the actress publicly kind of criticized the show for not doing a lot with her. So it seems they're finally going to take advantage of this particular character, and we're going to see a lot more potential storylines with her which we have not seen explored before. But probably the other male character who's explored is a little disappointing because Westworld Season 3 really left not on a high note, but very intriguing in terms of where the revolution was going that Dolores was sort of engineering and manipulating people for. And here, it kind of reversed everything. They just said, it happened, sort of, but it didn't seem to affect anything. In fact, some people are just mocking it openly, saying, yeah, okay, they shut down the machine, but I don't care. I didn't do anything, did it? It just felt kind of weak because basically it's just the hero guy has a wife who's constantly nagging him and saying, yeah, don't be a hero. Concentrate about the home life. And he's like, no, I need to save you guys. Like, no, no, you don't need to do that. So that felt very unproductive because, of course, he's just trying to help people, but his only major obstacle is his wife that constantly moans and complaining all the time. It just didn't seem to go anywhere. I do find it intriguing how they reversed what they did with them. So presumably now it's a challenge in terms of what did he think about the manipulation of season 3? What does he think of Dolores? Did he think it was worth it? So we're going to be exploring more of his internal psychology. That was good, but I felt he was probably one of the weakest stories. Although people had predictions that this character would be killed off, even off camera. Nope, he seems to be alive, and he seems to be in the real world, so, we'll have to wait and see. Acting wise, I found him very believable in his situation. I just didn't find his story particularly interesting. Overall, one great story at the very beginning. It's very intriguing, very well performed, and it just felt very exciting, but it was fairly brief. The other three stories were also intriguing, but the Dolores one, I think that's meant to have the most twists and paradoxes. I'm sort of in the middle. I'm like, okay, all right, that would make sense that Dolores would now be working for a video game company. That seems up her alley, but I don't know. I just felt deliberately too low key and a little too boring. So I was like, all right, that was a little bit of a downfall. Although they add some spice at the end with the twist, which was fine, but I don't think salvages her story. The other two, at least, were a lot more intriguing, and sort of you can see the outlines of where you think they're going to go, but we'll have to wait and see. Overall, one good story. The other three were fairly mediocre to weak, which was a little disappointing, but stuff seems to be actually happening. So that's a nice change of pace from the other seasons, and we may actually see stuff happen instead of just going in circles as usual with Westworld.